Hello and welcome to the Celtic Down Under Tuesday Crew podcast. I'm your host for tonight, Stephen McCutcheon, and I'm joined tonight by my very good friends, Dave and Willie, and it's a very warm welcome back from the pride of Belfast, Gav. So, how was your week off, Gav, and are you all refreshed and ready to go?
I'm refreshed and ready to go. I missed you guys terribly, but as we discussed last week, at least I had Love is Blind to see me through.
I did go and do a bit of research on Love is Blind, and I had a little bit. I watched the first 5 minutes, and it was just
the first five episodes. I think you mean.
I'm sure. It wasn't the worst TV show I've ever seen, but it was up there, to be honest. So good on you for sticking it out for that long. Mm-hmm. And Dave, how are you?
Yeah, doing well. Good to be back. Good to see you back. Yep.
And Willie, how's it going over there in New Zealand?
Yeah, the weather's changing. It's getting a bit autumnal over here, right? But other than that, we're doing very well.
All right. Well, let's get stuck into it straight away. We'll talk a bit about the game on Sunday just gone there. So Celtic's relentless march towards the title continued on with a very comfortable win down on the Ayrshire carpet down at Kilmarnock. 4-1 result. Team was 4-0 up after 27 minutes with a goal from Kyogo, 2 from Matt O'Reilly, and 1 from Daisen Maeda. And then that rounded out the scoring for us for the game, with Kilmarnock pulling one back just before half-time. Second half, bit of a non-event. But I'll just grab your brief thoughts in the game and any major talking points coming out of it. Go to you first, Gav.
Well, first half, absolutely incredible. Really exciting to watch. I got enough pleasure from the first half to do me for multiple games, so I didn't care that the second was a damn squib, to use the correct term there, Willie. The first goal, Kyogo's goal, everyone's saying, defensive lapse. And it was, but only because Kyogo was there to make it so. That ball that he played back, Kyogo was checking him out. He was already in the center circle, I think, when the ball was played, Kyogo was. And he knew it was coming, and he was already on the run by the time it left his foot, And I don't think anybody else in the Scottish League would have got to that and made that a mistake. So that was incredible. And Matt O'Reilly, amazing to see him back. I'm among those who've been critical of him / concerned with his lack of form over the past number of months. But to see him confident and happy and stroking home goals like that is a thing of beauty. He is indeed a thing of beauty. I think it's fair. I think we can all agree we're all modern men.
I'm with you there.
He's a very, very handsome man. Absolutely, mate.
So I really enjoyed it. Thought it was great. I mean, the first half was just so amazing. When those goals were flying in, so wonderful.
Yeah, when you go 4-0 up after 27 minutes, then you're sort of looking at sort of scoring records and stuff like that. But it didn't really eventuate. Willie, any concerns about the second half and the way we sort of dropped off?
Not really, because the game was dead, and I think taking Kyogo off and putting O on, I kind of got the impression O might have been trying a little too hard to impress Klinsmann. He did well in what he was doing, and but there wasn't that many chances for him to try and sort of capitalise on. He seemed to drop a little bit deeper here and there, just trying to get a bit of action on the ball. But I'm not too concerned. The game was dead, and I mean, if it was 1-1, we would be pressing. There wouldn't be the slack sort of play that was there. Kelly had a 10-minute spell from like 65 to 75 minutes where they had a few attacks on us, but they were never going to score. The only reason they did score is because Callum McGregor, for once, actually made a mistake in the game. First time I think I've seen him do it in a very, very long time. So. But it's a good result on the Lego, as I call it. It's a horrible pitch, and it's a good result. So, as you say, no concerns over the second half. Yeah, we did go off the boil, but we were well in control, so it didn't really matter too much.
Yeah, well, I maybe slightly disagree a little bit there. I was a little bit annoyed with the second half performance. And it really was, for me, out of step with what the mantra that Ange is always preaching, and that we never stop. And we definitely did stop. And it wasn't even, for me, just the second half. It was like the last 60 minutes of the game. So I thought the last 15 minutes of the first half we were pretty poor as well. And that was sort of reflective of Callum McGregor getting dispossessed in his own box. I thought Alistair Johnson had a bit of a stinker in the second half after being very good in the first half. I thought even Kobayashi, who had a very assured first half, I thought he started to a lot of passes going astray, not finding their targets, and I know Kilmarnock were pressing higher because they knew the game was gone and they were just trying to avoid an embarrassment at that point. But I would have been hopeful for a few more goals, to be honest. So Dave, what do you think? What was your view?
Yeah, no, that's the kind of analysis we cheat into for on Tuesday. We can't all agree, and that's good. I was thrilled by the as Gav says, after half an hour to kind of be it's interesting. Kyogo having a little chuckle after he missed the penalty was a bit uncharacteristic maybe, and a sense of how much fun they were having and how sort of comfortable they felt. I get what you're saying, Stephen, about Ange's mantra of never giving up, but I think this game was a bit of a tough one in that they've got a really good record at home and the plastic pitch. I think we go into every game feeling very confident now, more than very confident, with expectation. But of all of them, this was the one that that could have been a real difficult one. So I think to kind of go to really take the game away from them in the first half an hour was pretty extraordinary. I thought it was interesting that was it Jota and who else missed, and Ange seemed to be
CCV.
quite upfront. Yeah, CCV quite upfront about it's because of the pitch, and just the management, the management of the players that is kind of happening now. I thought was quite interesting, and I guess the fact that we've got such a strong squad and a deep squad now means that you can start making those smart decisions. So, yeah, we've got both the practical grind it out and the spectacular, blow them off the pitch, and a bit of laughs and chuckles along the way as well. I thought Kobayashi looked really good. As you point out, Stephen, I'd say that sort of pass to unlock the defence. I think he got it into Taylor and then into O'Reilly, who finished it. Like, it was just real crisp, good stuff kind of coming out from the back. So yeah, it was exciting to see a few new faces as well. And I really enjoyed myself. And yeah, to be able to tune out a bit in the second half without having to get too stressed about a performance maybe not being up to scratch.
Yeah, I mean, I accept there was mitigating factors there, and there was key players missing out of the team, and I think the fact that it was on an awful surface will have led to people trying self-preservation, just try to avoid injury, and as Mahesh has pointed out in the comments there, and thanks very much for everyone joining the comments. Killie went 4-3-3 first half, which was a bit of a disaster for them, and went 4-5-1 second half. It just pressed as high. They had the better second half XG, so they had more efforts in goal than us second half, and that certainly was the way I saw the game playing out. I just wanted to mention another missed penalty. Are we getting concerned about the amount of penalties we're missing? And what was going on with Kyogo? Before the penalty, he had this kind of daft wee grin on his face, and he was kind of laughing, and he looked as if he was being forced to take the penalty against his will, and he was really nervous about it. It was just kind of weird. But we missed far too many penalties for my liking, and I think it's going to cost us in one of these games eventually. Any thoughts on that? Yeah,
it looked like to me that maybe they'd had a conversation before the game, like who's going to take a penalty today, and the wheel of misfortune ended up pointing at Kyogo, and then he was laughing about that because it came to be. It's not often we get them, but yeah, it'd be nice to have somebody who's an ever present to just bang him in. Stick, well, I was going to say CCV, he didn't even play, but maybe like a defender who's just going to come up and put their laces through it every time. That would make life a lot easier.
Juranovic was certainly good at the penalties. I think he missed one in the time he was there, and I felt really confident every time he stepped up to take one. Moy as well is another one who can take penalties. He seems pretty confident with it, but it's been like that for a while. There's always every time a penalty goes in, you're just never so sure, right? You know what I mean? It's not just at present. There's been other teams. I think Gordon Strachan's team didn't really have a clear penalty taker either. I'm trying to think. I'm just coming to mind, but
I mean, having a good penalty taker is important, right? But not at the expense of the rest of their jobs. Like if you look at Rangers, Tavernier, or maybe I've missed the memo, but every Celtic fan seems to pronounce that in a different way. But I believe it's Tavernier, not Tavernier.
I think the correct pronunciation is Tav Pen.
Tav Pen.
That's how I say it.
He can strike a ball. There's no doubt.
He can, for sure. Yeah. I think we're all just used to having guys like Dembele and Edouard stepping up and doing Panenkas in cup finals and stuff like that. So we have had good penalty takers in the sort of recent past. But yeah, we're certainly struggling on that front just now. But it's not the end of the world. I think Aaron Moy can strike a decent penalty. He obviously wasn't on the pitch at the time, but he would certainly be first choice. And hopefully the next time we get one, we'll have sorted that out. I might just grab your views on the surface itself, because it has caused a bit of controversy. I think it's a little bit ridiculous in a top flight league. We are having to leave players out the team because of the surface, when otherwise they would have played. And that's basically what Ange said post-match, that both CCV and Jota were left out because of the surface. Now, I get the sort of financial aspect to it, where clubs like Kilmarnock can rent out the pitch for community events and things like that. But what do we feel about it? Is it time we went all grass for the top league and made that a prerequisite of getting in the SPL?
I think Ange was...
Go with it. No, on you go, mate.
Just the fact that Ange was so pointed about it. He doesn't say things accidentally. And whether he's trying to make a point about the professionalism and the equity of, what is a top 10 European league, I think he's kind of trying to expose a bit of, and use whatever influence he has to call that out. And that's as much of an indictment as anything, as you could say, that players literally can't play on the pitch. Then you've got a real problem. In terms of mandating it, it would be a pity to see sides that have made that investment and made that decision not be able to, participate in the top flight. So I don't think it's as straightforward as that, because there's clearly, structural sort of ongoing costs that preclude the grass pitches in these places. I wouldn't have made those decisions otherwise. So I think you could sort of make it a condition, but I don't know whether there's some sort of subsidization or something. I'm not too sure, but I think our manager is clearly saying, like, this is not acceptable for the levels that we're expecting to play at, and so it is. What do you reckon, Willie?
I think they've got to go, man. There's guys getting injured on them. There's guys not getting played. I mean, Jozo Simunovic, we couldn't put him near anyone. That was like 6 games a season he would miss, because he had Hamilton, Livingston and Kilmarnock in the top flight at the time. None of them are great. They all look like they're Lego bricks stuck down. It just looks horrible. You look at Callum McGregor when he fell, the guy sort of shoulder bars him out the way. It looked sore. He didn't bounce. He just thudded straight down. There was no... You can tell it's a different sort of landing he had there. It's just, and he hurt himself when he get back up. You could see it was a rubbing his shoulder. It's a sore when he's taken. But if Kilmarnock go down, and I kind of hope Kilmarnock do go down now, because you have a chance. We have a voting structure. I think it's 11-1 of all the 12 teams. It has to be 11-1 in one way or the other to get to make a rule pass. So if all 11 clubs vote, saying, right, no more plastic pitches, the only one that's going to vote for it then is Livingston, who aren't going to get relegated, and they have no choice. But here's 2 seasons, get your pitch up to scratch or face sanctions. You just get expelled from the league until you can get a grass pitch. I mean, Motherwell had a really, really bad pitch for years, and they spent a little bit of money on it. And now look at it, it's one of the best playing surfaces in Scotland. So it can be done now.
And what's wrong with
the
the
issue
mud?
of the pitch connected to the whole ticketing issue as well? I don't know if you've seen that discussed elsewhere, where they say like Celtic could have had another 4,000 tickets, and at £35 a head, that's nearly 150,000. Multiply that by 4 with the two Glasgow teams, and that's 600 grand a year that they're not getting to improve their surface and pay a couple of groundsmen to maintain and the rest of it.
So whether they should be mandated to, or strongly encouraged to accept those tickets, or to make those tickets available, because there's a revenue stream just sitting right there.
And I don't even know. Sorry, Dave, on you go, mate.
Honestly,
I was just going to say, I don't even know how modern an AstroTurf pitch that is, because I know they've got some pretty good ones kicking around just now, some really good technologies going into all-weather pitches, but I really don't. I wouldn't bet that that's one of the better ones, to be honest. As far as the ticketing thing goes, look, I think I can understand where the teams like Kilmarnock are coming from. They don't really want to see three-sided a ground full of Celtic fans going mad while they're getting cuffed 5-0. That's not a pleasant experience for anyone who watches these teams. And I think sometimes we have to think ourselves into their position a little bit, difficult though it is. But I do see the point about the finances, and they could bring in a lot more money for themselves and possibly get a better team, and improve performances against Celtic and Rangers. So, look, I can see both sides to that argument.
I'm not sure the incentive for them to, if they're mandated to, or encouraged to spend that money on a pitch that's going to make it easier for Celtic to come and beat them, by raising the money by letting more Celtic fans into the park. I can't see the incentive in it for them, except if it's like some sort of directive. But what's the issue? Why is it to do with safety, player safety, or is it to do with the quality of the spectacle around having grass pitches that are muddy or whatever? Like, why can you not have, or is it because if it's a safety thing, which seems most likely, then we've got that. It hasn't fixed that problem. If having a poorer quality grass pitch is unsafe, well, so is having a that quality plastic pitch. So I'm not sure what problem is being solved necessarily by it, except is it the ongoing maintenance or something like?
Yeah, I imagine.
I would say it's a cost issue. Like, you're paying groundsmen. Undersoil heating has to be on through the week, and that if you've got a grass pitch, it's a lot of money.
And
can I talk about something sort of adjacent to this? There's a lot of talk about how the rest of the league is really weak at the moment, and it's up to these other teams to do everything they can to boost their own resources instead of complaining about the bigger clubs. There's a couple of things I noticed watching that game today. It's slightly silly, but they might feed into the whole thing. One is the Kilmarnock crest is incredibly weird, isn't it? It's got a couple of squirrels either side of a crown. Are they not squirrels?
Yeah, they are squirrels.
Either side of a crown with a hand doing like a two-fingered dodgy handshake salute or something. And I was thinking, like, squirrels. I mean, who wants to play for a team, of squirrels? But sports teams are usually associated with predators, eagles and wolves and lions and tigers. But, it doesn't make you puff your chest up to go out onto the pitch from a low-ceilinged doorway. You see, Joe Hart couldn't even get under that thing. So your head's already bowed as you trot out onto the plastic surface to represent the squirrels. I mean, what sort of marketing manager is behind all that? Surely that could do with a revamp.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say, I don't know, right? But my dad was
That's why everyone tuned in, Steve.
Yeah, it's a decisive comment, I know. But I should be able to find this out relatively quickly, because my dad was actually a Kilmarnock fan because he was born and raised in the town. So I do have some relations that still go to Kilmarnock games. So I'll find that out, and that'll be my homework for next week. How about that?
That's good. That'll be interesting. The finger symbol is quite interesting as well. It clearly means something specific. So I know a lot of players get in trouble for finger signals here in Australia. over the
You've
years.
got to read a couple of the comments there, Steve, that have come in about this finger signals.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I'll let you read them, Gav. Can you see them?
Well, let me see. Strange Love the Doctor, who probably is qualified to say this sort of thing, says, "Don't forget the lesbian's hand signal." It's one of them. And then somebody else, Edward Y of Oz, says, "Reminds me of a prostate checkup." Good luck to you, Edward. I hope everything works out.
Surely not 2 fingers. That's harsh.
He's an accommodating kind of guy.
Yes, yeah.
I don't know. Pete McGee is saying about the Secret Lodge album emblem, and I'm not sure if Pete's being serious there, but I was wondering that. Like, is there some sort of that's what it resembles? So yeah.
I don't think
interested to hear.
Yeah, okay. So we've sort of summarised the fact that we'd like Kilmarnock to go down because of their rubbish pitch, their terrible badge that reminds of us prostate checkups, and there is a third reason I would like them to go down as well, and that is Derek McInnes. Now he has to be, the biggest tosser in Scottish football. And it's a very high bar. It really is.
It's a crowded field,
Did you hear his post-match comments about asking why O wasn't sent off for a high boot? And he wasn't actually saying that he thought O should have been sent off. It was just like saying one of his players had been sent off for a high. I haven't even seen this incident for a high boot a couple of weeks ago. And where was the consistency? So just to summarise that, he wants them to be consistently wrong in the refereeing decisions, not even consistently right. And he just, of all the things he could have spoke about after the game, he could have mentioned the fact that his team were improved second half. Yeah. They won the second half, as it were, if you go by Bealenomics, as it's become known. So they won the second half 1-0. So he could have focused on that and just spoke up his own team. But he decided that he was going to talk a load of shit about Celtic and try and never once mentioned how good Celtic were in the first 30 minutes. So Derek McInnes, give yourself an uppercut, and I hope you end up in the first division. So what's your thoughts on Derek McInnes?
Well, he's a namesake of mine, so I won't be too harsh. But no, I don't know. I don't have particular opinions, but I do have a solution for the plastic pitch conundrum, which is we should install one ourselves, and then we will get guaranteed results at Livy and Kilmarnock, and will be a tough away trip for Europe. So I've solved it, and save a bit of cash because we need that.
Sounds good, Dave. So yeah, we have a comment here. I'll just read out who reckons. It's Kaiser HTTC who thinks Derek McInnes and David Martindale are scoring points with the staunch to try and get Beale's job after he gets sacked. So that's a good point, isn't it? Maybe that's what he is doing. He is a dirty big hun, Derek McInnes. So that's his background. So anything else to add on the game? Anything else we want to say?
I actually thought.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Gav, on you go, mate.
I'm talking too much. I was only going to say that I'd like to see Matt O'Reilly celebrate more effusively. I want to see him complete his celebrations. He sort of gives up halfway through. I want to see him run at the crowd and fist pumping, whereas he kind of turns into a dingle-dangle scarecrow after, half of his celebration. And the head goes down and the arms swing and,
He always reminds me of a guy who hasn't scored a goal in about 3 years. It just seems to be complete relief that he's finally scored a goal. And he'd scored one like 5 minutes earlier. So, I know what you're saying. He doesn't seem to enjoy it that much. So. And Willie, you were going to add something on the game?
I was just going to say, the more I see Iwata, the more impressed I am. That guy he is a player. Like, we can see that now. Like, and it's just great to see him starting to get integrated in the team. I thought he was just like, this guy's a holding midfielder, and he'll sit there and he'll soak up all the pressure helped the defence out. But he seems to be a pretty complete midfielder from what I'm seeing so far. He's got that number 8 quality about him where he'll just go box to box if need be. Soak it up, sit back and help the defence. Great player. Like, hopefully it'll continue.
Yeah, I think he was one of the players for me that put in a 90-minute good performance. I think he was good first and second half. And I think I'm really looking forward to seeing a midfield 3 at some point of McGregor, Iwata and Hatate. I think that's very exciting and it could do some real damage to teams in the future. Might not see it this season, but certainly moving into next year in the Champions League. It's certainly an area we can improve.
Yeah.
And I've just Googled what the hand symbol is, and it represents the 6th century disciple of St. Columba, St. Marnan, for whom Kilmarnock is named the town. So it's actually a deep Catholic symbol from the deep history of Scotland's Catholic past. So there we go.
Doesn't explain the squirrels though, does it?
No, I couldn't get to the squirrel. Yeah, I don't.
So we'll do a bit of squirrel hunting over the next week, and I'll report back next week. All right, we'll move on for the game. And as we sit 12 points clear in the league and marching towards the title, we're on course to break the 100 points mark and break some records. So I thought it'd be a good idea to have a look at Brendan Rodgers' Invincible Treble side and sort of try and make a judgment about how many of that team would get into our current team and vice versa. Brendan Rodgers' team in 2016-17 were, of course, invincible. Never lost a game, but drew 4 games. So they dropped a total of 8 points in the season. So we've currently lost 1 and drew 1. So we're sitting on 5 points dropped. So if we go win all the rest of our games, which is a possibility, we'll have a better record than the invincible team. So I think it's an interesting discussion to have. Before we get into that, I might just grab your thoughts on Brendan Rodgers, the man himself, a couple of weeks after he was given his marching orders by Leicester City, and see how we're feeling about him. Like a few years after he left under very acrimonious circumstances, and a lot of Celtic fans don't have a lot of nice things to say about him. So, Gav, I'll let you go into bat first for your fellow Ulsterman.
Yep. Well, he's from Carnlough, which is a little village on the Antrim coast. And it's a couple of villages along from where my family originate from. It's kind of almost the nearest point of the island of Ireland to Scotland. You can see the Mullaghentire lighthouse twinkling across the sea. And so I was excited when he got it seemed to fit very nicely. And I think he's a very talented manager. He's clearly a man of ambition and someone of not inconsiderable ego. Am I still there?
Yeah, I've still got you. You're kind of breaking up a little bit.
It's just all about the way he left. The way he left is the problem. Other managers, the way Martin O'Neill left, he couldn't have blotted his copybook, but he left at a bad time, middle of the season. We all know the story. And, Celtic fans are very unforgiving. It's like when you break up with someone in a relationship, are you the type to be able to look back on it fondly and not the way it ended? Or do you focus on the acrimonious and bitter end and hate them forever?
Very philosophical, Gav. So what are you saying then? Do you like him? You love him or hate him?
I don't hate him as much as many others.
Okay. Willie, thoughts on the Brodge?
Aye, as Gav summed up there, I'm only going to focus on the bitter end of it, like stuffing. The way he did it was just so wrong. If he'd waited till the end of the season, he would have left a legend. We would still be singing his name now and again, here and there. But to do it the way he did it, and then to find out that Leicester were prepared to wait until the close season for him to come down, that was just a massive slap in the face. And the one that you see him sitting there that night, he's sitting there at the Leicester Stadium with his cup of tea in his hand. Oh, there's me. I've made it. I'm back in the big time. Look at me. I was just like, you're called the Rat for a reason now, and that name's going to stick forevermore. So I'll just leave it at that before I get a bit too heated and start throwing things around and smashing things.
Yeah, I think we got the gist of that there, Willie.
Yeah.
So
But
that's
you're
all
not
noted. So Dave,
I think,
the Broch.
I don't have particular animosity or anything like that, but I think it's one of those things. You can forgive almost anything except hypocrisy sometimes, and it's sort of it was that he was making indications that he was going to stay, and he was sort of committed to the badge like right up until the last minute, right? Like that's and so you can't discount the sort of. There's ways to conduct yourself, and clearly he hasn't lived up to that. But it is something that happens quite a bit, and I do wonder, I can't imagine a similar thing happening with Ange Postecoglou, but what happened in Yokohama with him as well. That's a story we don't hear, and from what we gather, I mean, we're talking about a very different culture and a very different footballing culture, I suppose, where there is a lot of movement, and it was probably understood all along that Ange would take a different opportunity. But he had no problem sort of moving instantly from a live campaign, in which I think they were in with a shout that they didn't end up winning. So yeah, I'm not trying to make an equivalence or sort of make out that Ange is a bad guy, but I just think these things do happen, but it's about how you set that up. And I think Ange is it feels now trying to establish with everyone that he can be trusted and that he will stay around as long as possible, and that when but everything changes and things will move on. He's kind of establishing that's going to, not pretending that it's all going to be fine. Now, if he were to leave tomorrow, then yeah, that's a very interesting discussion then, around how we think about that. But the fact is, Brendan Rodgers did that. That's how he's felt. That's how he's regarded with this club. We all have different perspectives on the same individuals through this game. So yeah, I think it's sort of, don't pretend to be doing something that you're not. And I didn't know about that, Willie, where you were saying that Leicester gave him the option of delaying, and then that seems like a haste to get out rather than let's finish the job sort of idea.
Yeah, I think Ange left Brisbane Roar under a little bit of a cloud in similar circumstances, maybe not similar circumstances, but not very friendly circumstances. So
we went down to Melbourne Victory,
who
were considered the bigger club, and then he left Melbourne Victory very rapidly as well to take the national role, which is understandable and makes sense. So not to say that he's a serial rat or anything like that, but it does happen. And I can see in the comments that Andrew saying that you left Yokohama Marinos with the club's blessing and so on. And I mean, it'd be interesting to see what fans think, I suppose. Not suggesting that's not true, but it would be interesting.
Yeah, I think for me, I understand why he gets the bad press that he does, but I think I draw the line at calling him a rat. He brought so much to Celtic in terms of professionalism, and he turned us from being, quite frankly, a rabble, which we were at the time when Rory Dyler got sacked, and there was all sorts going on at the club. And if you listen to players talk about Brendan Rodgers, guys like Cal McGregor, Scott Brown, and Kieran Tierney all get great things to say about him, about how he made them better players and certainly assisted them in getting to where they ended up as top-class professional football players. So he definitely got a lot of qualities. I think it's clear that the most important thing to Brendan Rodgers is Brendan Rodgers, and that was always going to be the case. He was always going to do what was right for him. But when he got into his final season, I think the relationship with the board, in particular Peter Law, had broken down beyond all repair. And I think it was only a matter of time. But I understand it. He could have waited to the end of the season, and to leave the club and try and take the entire backroom team with him on the eve of an away Scottish Cup tie at Tynecastle was pretty poor behaviour. But I think time's a healer. And I think in a few years' time, we'll look back on Rodgers' time at the club and we'll look at the fact he won every trophy that he was here for. He didn't lose any trophies. And he turned us into a more professional outfit. And Ange has reaped the benefit of that as well, for sure.
He's a top quality manager. You can't disguise that in any way, shape, or form. Even success he's had at Leicester, it's just come to a bitter end for him. Well, not a bitter end. It's just come to the end of his run there. But he's had a successful time there too. Like, you know, what I mean, he is a good coach. There's no getting away from that. Like, and like you say, he did turn Celtic into a serious outfit once again after that.
And you know, the question of loyalty in football, like, you know, clubs will very quickly give you the boot. You know,
yeah,
we see it in the game all the time, and we see players leaving clubs left, right, and centre, and you know, there is no real loyalty.
And Angelo Tyro's saying in the comments there, if Liverpool came calling, Ange would be waving his hanky goodbye at all of us. So, you know, there's a possibility.
That's
you know what I mean? You can never be sure, can you?
No.
And he did
many opportunities. You know, if you're someone like Ange or even Rodgers, you know, you don't get many opportunities, and you don't really get the opportunity to turn things down. I guess so. It's that sort of, I think the hypocrisy, and I don't, that I think we understand where we fit in the scheme of things. So, you know, the fact that Rodgers leaves isn't a problem. It's the manner in which it happens, and you know, let's not cast forward to when Ange might leave. I think I'd be pretty confident that he would be doing that with full integrity.
And then Brendan Rodgers, you can say anything like about him, but he did have a very impressive set of teeth. They were very white.
Eventually, when he got them done.
Yeah, he definitely was a bit of money went into those teeth for sure. Good investment, I reckon. All right, so let's get back onto the business in hand. And we're going to look at the team, the Brendan Rodgers' Invincible team against the current Celtic team and see if we can assemble a combined 11. Now, I've based this roughly on the team that won the 2017 Cup final against Aberdeen with Tommy Rogic scoring in injury time to seal the Invincible treble. I've added a couple in who weren't playing in that game. But I think if there's anybody you can think that I've missed out, please drop in the comments or let me know. So goalkeepers, I've only listed down either Craig Gordon or Joe Hart. So obviously there was other guys like Scott Bain and Doris de Vries and guys like that, and Benji Siegrist currently, but I think those two would be the only realistic options. So who have you got in goals for the combined 11, Wally? I'll go to you first.
Craig Gordon for me, right? Both very, very, very accomplished shot stoppers. Craig Gordon's probably more confident and commanding of his box, and you see bigger performances out of Gordon a lot, like, so yeah, Craig Gordon for me, like.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think they're very similar goalkeepers. I've seen Gordon make a few clangers in his time as well. And I think Hart would make less mistakes than Gordon. What do you think, Gav? Yeah, any thoughts on the goalkeeping situation?
Well, I think neither of them are Ange players, and neither of them are like ideal goalkeepers for an Ange Postecoglou team. That's what I would say. And also, as we're doing this bit, I think given the conversations we had earlier, maybe Stephen, you and Willie can run through the players, and Dave and I can chip in a little bit. But in the interest of time, I don't think we're going to be able to, all four of us.
I'm also taking note. I'm trying to keep a score here as well of who wins. Yeah, so and we had this up in our Celtic Down Under group chat, and I've took a bit of a score from them, from those inputs as well. So we'll move on to right back, and we've got there Mikael Lustig against Alistair Johnson. So for me, I think they're very similar players again. Good right backs with a hard edge to them. Alistair Johnson has been a very good start to his career, but I would give it to Mikael Lustig just for longevity over a number of seasons. And he edges it for me for putting on a policeman's hat after a goal against Rangers and a bit of banter that will never be defeated. So Lustig's get it from me. What about you, Willie?
After yesterday's display, seen a couple of mistakes here and there that Johnson made, I would go with Lustig again. But you could ask me this question tomorrow and I'll say Johnson. You can ask me this question on Thursday. You can ask me this on Friday and I'll have a different answer for you. So I'm swaying towards Lustig at the moment. Like,
Yeah.
And again, what
Probably
is
a bit early
who's
for-
the better player, or would they get
Yeah.
into Ange's team? Would Ange
I
pick these people?
I
don't
I
think.
think Ange. I don't know. I think he might. Like, but then if it depends. If you wanted to play Brendan Rodgers style, you'd go with Lustig.
Well, that's
And
the
then if
thing.
you wanted to play Ange's style, you would probably go for Johnson, because I don't think Lustig would be able to sort of invert the way Taylor and Johnson are very, very comfortable at doing. Right? So it would kind of be dependent on the formation you're going to go with. Are you wanting an overlapping fullback, or are you wanting an inverting fullback?
So most of the comments are along the lines of what I said, basically Lustig, because he's been there longer and proved it over a longer period of time. So I think he would probably edge it. Andrew Galea's thrown in Anthony Ralston for a bit of a
Get a bricky in.
If Juranovic was still around, Juranovic, deserves a bit of a mention as well. What was he, a starting member of the World Cup third place getter or fourth place getter or something like that? He's a highly rated, and he performed well for us. He sort of got that. So anyway, let's not complicate it too much with past players. It's complicated enough, but yeah, I'd go for Lustig.
Okay, so we'll pick two centre halves now out of a list of Joseph Simunovic, Dedrick Boyata, Christopher Ayer, Carol Starfelt, or Cameron Carter-Vickers. So just give us two, Willie. Who are you going with?
CCV and Ayer. I think Ayer would be absolutely fantastic in the Ange's system, to be honest with you. I'm just kind of sad he left, because I think he could have really worked out well for him there. But yeah,
it's a pity, isn't it? He was there for a few games, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Would have been great.
I think he was one of the ones that wanted a move a year earlier than he got it. One of the problems with the COVID season under Neil Lennon was that a lot of players had been promised transfers at the end of that season when we won 10 in a row, but their heart wasn't in it. And looking back on it now, they should have been sold the year before and replaced for that season. But hindsight and all that 2020 vision. So that's basically the way it's went. Really, it's a clear pick of Cameron Carter-Vickers and Christopher Ayer as the left-sided of the two centre halves. Probably you'd be hoping that Kobayashi would step into that over the next year or two, but we'll wait and see. So left back was pretty much one of the cut and dried ones. So you've got either Kieran Tierney or Greg Taylor there. So Willie, who are you going with?
Kieran Tierney. I think he's just an all-round better player. I mean, Greg Taylor's fantastic for us, but Kieran Tierney's the next level up from him, really. So Tierney for me.
I don't think there'll be many arguments with that. A genuine world-class player. Not in his troubles to seek down in Arsenal injury-wise, but genuine world-class. And I laugh when I read comments about people saying they wouldn't have him back at Celtic because of another one who dared to leave. But I would have Kieran Tierney back in a second, to be honest. Absolutely fabulous player.
Yep, no disagreement.
So we'll step into central midfield. There's a couple of crossover players who played in both the teams. So you get Cal McGregor, you got Tommy Rogic. So that'd be the two that have played under Rodgers and Ange. You got Scott Brown, Stuart Armstrong, Aaron Moy, or Rio Hatate. Might have added in David Turnbull there, but I don't think he'd get many votes anyway. So picks a midfield three. We're going for a three-man central midfield. So Willie, who'd be your three?
Brown, Cal McGregor, and Rio Hatate. I think Scott Brown, he would just play in that anchor role. It'd be you look at some of the way he played, just doing the holding thing under Rodgers. He was just he just hit an Indian summer there in his career. And Carmack, for obvious reasons, he's one of the best midfielders Celtic's had in a very, very long time. And Rio Hatate, he just gets better every time you see him. You know what I mean? So for me, it's that three.
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying there. The only thing I would say was with Callum McGregor and Scott Brown, maybe we'll be looking to play the same sort of position. Certainly they're playing the same sort of position now. Cal Mack maybe a bit further forward when Scott Brown was in the team. And Shane's brought up in the comments there that we should have Tommy Rogic in there somewhere because we are a Celtic Down Under podcast. So maybe Tommy Rogic could find a space there.
He'd be my super sub. He'd be coming off the bench to score the winners in finals and things like that. So definitely room for him there, like. But I think if you, Brown, I'd have to have Brown in there, the captain. You know what I mean? Just because he's Scott Brown and he was ferocious.
You'd have to have him, Willie. You'd have to have him.
I would.
Would Ange have Scott Brown? Do you think?
I don't know. If he had a young fit Scott Brown, then you can see that the holding midfielder role, that number 6, Scott Brown, would be quite comfortable to make that his own. Like push Callum McGregor into number 8 with Rio Tati sitting in front of him. But then you could see he could go to a double pivot, and you could have a double pivot of Callum Mack and Scott Brown there. Like, you know what I mean? That you might try and do next season with Awata and Callum Mack and have a Tati in front of them. Like, so there's possibilities there, but I just think you look at the amount of trophies Scott Brown's got, you can't argue with that. Like, you know what I mean?
I think Ange would have loved Scott Brown. His energy, the energy he brings to any team, and the amount of games where he just dragged Celtic forward when we were maybe on the way out of a game, and he just brought us right back into it, just with pure energy and desire. I think any manager would love to have him in the team. Certainly towards the last few years of his career. But the standout is what you were saying there, Willie. All the votes are going for Cal Mack, Bruni, and Rio Hatate. So I think that'll be the ones that will be getting the nod for our team.
I had Rogic in there.
You had Rogic?
I'd be putting Rogic in there. Yeah, I'm not sure which one. I think last year's Rogic was just a brilliant, swan song kind of thing. We didn't realise it at the time, but I guess in retrospect it was obvious. I don't know if there's any Australian footy fans, but if they remember Matthew Richardson, in his last years with Richmond, kind of had this freewheeling kind of role, wandering up and down the wing. And Tom Rogic reminded me of that, like just of someone who just sort of was playing with a freedom that they maybe hadn't had before, and was being backed in and being supported and being supported all the way out the door towards the end as well. But it was a joy watching him last year, and I'm glad we got that little time of him and Ange together.
Yeah, I think Rogic's highlight reel will be as good as anyone's. But I think we can't really forget that if when he wasn't on, he really wasn't on, and he was like a passenger. So, and I think that's why it came time for Celtic and Tom Rogic to part ways, and I think Ange realised that. But great player on his day for sure, and the winner for that 2017 Cup final is a game that will go down in Celtic history and will be being watched for decades to come.
Yeah, and I think I'll just jump in with a little pat on the back here for the Tuesday crew for all 4 windows pronouncing his name Rogic as opposed to Rogic or Rogic or some other variation. So well done us.
Yeah, well, we've done a linguistic history thing before, haven't we? So we're all well versed in the English language now. So this is why people tune in, isn't it? I knew there must be some reason.
Linguistic precision. Yep.
All right, so we'll call them wide midfielders. I'm not really comfortable with the term wingers because they're not really wingers these days, but we'll call them wide midfielders. So we've got Scotty Sinclair, we've got Paddy Roberts, we get James Forrest, Daisen Maeda, Leila Bada, and Jota. So Willie, give us your 2 wide midfielders. Doesn't really matter what side they're playing on. We'll just we'll be a bit loose with that one.
Some list of players there, but for me, I'm going with Jota and Sinclair. I just think Jota gets better every time I see him. He's just so more confident, and he's scoring goals. He's rounding keepers. All right, pensioners right enough, but he's got all sorts of different goals in the back in the locker. And Scott Sinclair was just phenomenal. It was just pace and goals, you know what I mean? Just getting beyond people. So yeah, definitely Jota and Sinclair.
Yeah, Scott Sinclair's first season especially, he was phenomenal. He came off the bench in Tynecastle to make his debut and scored the winner there.
His debut.
Absolutely brilliant. Great player. Fell away a bit towards the end of his time there. but always speaks very highly of Celtic anytime I've seen him being interviewed about it. Patrick Roberts, another one, deserves an honourable mention. A very good player.
He was.
Again, just wrong place, wrong time, really. We had him on loan, couldn't afford to buy him, and his career's sort of sliding off. He's at Sunderland now, isn't he? So he's on
Sunderland
the slide.
Or Middlesbrough, one of the two.
And he'll never play at a higher level than Celtic again. So I wonder if he could do it all again, whether he would make a different decision. So that was pretty much the majority decision. Was Sinclair one side, Jota on the other. Any disagreement, Gav, Dave?
No,
I had Jota. Yeah, I had Jota and question mark. Just because there were a lot of so many options there. I think if we were doing this in a few years, we might say Abada, but Lil Abada, but he doesn't get on the park enough for us to be able to say that right now. But he is hoping that he grows into the player that we think he might be, and then we're in retrospect we'll be cherishing this time that we've had with him here.
I was always tempted to say James Forrest. I've got a mate, and I'm going to out him. His name's Colin McRobbie, and he hates James Forrest with a passion that almost verges on weirdness. So I was almost tempted to put James Forrest in there just to wind up Colin. But yeah, no, I think Scott Sinclair and Jota would definitely get my nod. So we'll move on.
I agree with what Andrew's saying here. Sorry, Andrew in the comments here saying that no one does what Maeda does, and I think that's a really valid point as well. I mean, he's scored on the weekend, and that's great to see that in his game as well. And early on, he was scoring a lot. But yeah, that pressure that he brings and the pace, and it's quite extraordinary. So yeah,
his defensive attributes as well. Maeda just closes that ball down high up the pitch and allows us to get back in and get ready again for any sort of wave that might be coming back at us. But Sinclair for me, definitely.
All right, so we've got a lone striker to choose now in our formation. So you've got a choice of Lee Griffiths, Moussa Dembele, Odsonne Edouard, Kyogo, Giakoumakis, or O. So who's your lone striker, Willie?
I've gone Kyogo. I just think what Kyogo does is just it's just something else. That perpetual motion. He's just constantly moving, pulling defenders with him, opening spaces. He just never gives up, and it's the full 90 minutes. He's at 60 minutes is what he gets. Like it's just movement, and his goals. You see the goals he scores against Rangers. Now he's turned into a proper hand scalper, and he's got the chance this season to beat the record. So I think Larsson sits on 6 goals in one season against Rangers, and Kyogo's already on 5. So 2 more goals, and he'll set the record. So for me, it's Kyogo. Right?
So yeah, I mean, the majority from the votes that came in was for Moussa Dembele. To be honest, there was the only 2 who got any votes were Dembele and Kyogo, with Dembele coming out on top. Surprised me a bit because again Dembele left under a little bit of a cloud, went in a bit of a huff towards the end of his time at Celtic. Another Hun scalper though, definitely scored a hat trick against the Huns in a 5-0 thrashing at Parkhead.
We were on a family holiday watching it, and my whole family, 90% of my family are Rangers fans, and we're all sat there having a meal in a bar watching it. I'm just sitting there, smile from ear to ear, and the rest of the family just sitting there, just not even giving eye contact with me. It's brilliant, that game, man.
Yeah, it was what's known as the perfect hat trick. One with his right foot, one with his left foot, and one with his head. So fantastic performance. And the amazing thing about that was the controversy before the game was that Lee Griffiths was injured, and everybody thought that was a big blow for Celtic's chances. But then Dembele comes in and just absolutely wipes the floor with them. Peter McGlone there making a fair comment. There was a lesser Hun team than what Kyogo's playing against, which is a very valid comment. Probably for a number of these players, the opposition is much stronger today than it was back then. So I'm gonna do a captain's pick thing here. I'm just gonna give that one to Kyogo because I like him, and that's it. So we've got a team of we're actually evenly split between Craig Gordon and Joe Hart. We've got Michael Lustig at right back. We've got CCV and Chris Ayer at centre halves. Kieran Tierney at left back. We've got a midfielder, Callum McGregor, Rio Hatate and Scott Brown. Wide midfielders are Scott Sinclair and Jota, and Kyogo up front on his own. And that's a team that would smash anyone, in my opinion.
I'm very disappointed that O didn't get a few more votes, I have to say. I've no idea why he was even in the list. That's crazy, Steve. I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet about O. I said it before. It hasn't done much to show me that he's a great footballer. I know lots of people disagree, and we're all desperate to say he's far better than Giakoumakis. What an upgrade. I wonder how many goals Giakoumakis would have scored if that relationship hadn't soured up to this point of the season. But when you talk about Dembele, I said a few episodes ago that I felt like we had our first and our third choice strikers in the squad, and we need a second. The second would be of the mold of Dembele in an ideal world. Somebody like that with that kind of pace and power and skill and drive. Fantastic striker. And somebody who could really push Kyogo. And somebody who, when he was coming on, you might suspect that he had a goal in him. Unlike when O comes on. And I know it's early days, but you don't expect him to score even if Klinsmann's in the stands.
Yeah, no, I get that. I put him in there on account of his impressive rig, to be honest.
His impressive
rig when he takes his shirt off. So he's got an impressive rig. Yeah, 6-pack. So that's why he was in there. I can appreciate a good 6-pack. So,
like I say, we're all modern men here.
And I'm the host, Gav, so I get to pick these things. So
All right.
All right, so we got the team. That was good fun. So I'm glad we did that. So we'll move on to our last topic for the night, which is we're going to have a look at the Champions League restructuring, what that's going to look like for the 2024 season, and how that's going to affect Celtic. So take it away, Gav. You're going to tell us a bit about this.
Yep. Sorry, I'm just opening up my notes here. Okay, so there are big changes afoot to the Champions League format over the next couple of years. Next year's is the way we know it to be, but the year after that, something else is happening that we need to be aware of. I don't know, I'm sure plenty of people listening know exactly what's going on, but the 24-25 season is going to be different. There's going to be no group stages in the classical sense, but one big league of 36 teams, a big league table anyway, of 36 teams. Each team plays different teams, 4 home and 4 away. So we won't be playing the same team home and away. 8 different games with 2 from each of 4 pots. So a minimum of 8 games, current 6. So a couple more games. And it'll be really interesting to see the table of all the Champions League contenders and see after each game how we sit. That's going to be fun. There's going to be no dropping into the UEFA Cup. And the interesting thing for me is this. The top 8 go into the last 16 after all is said and done. The top 8 in the league, they definitely go into the last 16. As do the next 8 from playoffs between 9th and 24th. So if you finish in the top 24 out of a league of 36 and you're not in the top 8, you've still got a playoff to get into the last 16. So that keeps it really interesting for the majority of teams until the very end. Only those at the bottom of the table will have nothing to play for. Now, what's interesting to me about that is we're talking about Ange earlier. How long is he going to stay for? What are his ambitions with Celtic? Next season in the Champions League, what's the best we can hope for, really? We'd love a top 16 finish, but a better showing, a couple of scalps, UEFA Cup, a decent run, that'll be put down as progress. But then Ange will be looking at the following season with Celtic, assuming we get into it by winning the league next year, which I believe is going to be enough, no problem. That gives you at least the playoff chance of a last 16 if you do okay. in the kind of group stages, if you like. So that's, if ever we needed, a carrot to dangle, I think, in front of Ange to say, look, at least give this new format a go the subsequent season. This could be it. So that gives me hope that that'll strengthen our hand when it comes to keeping Ange, because he'll see that his ultimate ambitions with Celtic can be achieved in this new format in a perhaps easier to conceptualize way than the current format. So I'll throw that back to you boys to discuss.
What was the? I don't know. Did my sound drop out or did yours drop out? But you said about the fixtures, how they were going to be decided, like the pots.
Yeah, well, there's going to be 4 different pots.
Yeah.
A, B, C, and D, and you play 8 games, 2 from each of the 4 pots.
Yeah,
including your own.
Drawn, is that'll be drawn right at the start then? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, because that thing that we discussed earlier, Willie, about the Swiss system where the fixtures are decided on an ongoing basis, that won't be the case.
It's like a simplified version of that.
You know who you're playing. It's as if you're in a group with these, sort of as if you're in a group with them, even though you only play them once. But then the results are tallied on a big overarching table.
Yeah. I get that. So, no, I just wasn't sure about the fixtures and who you were going to play and what sort of format it was going to be for. Are you going to play top? But you've explained it pretty well, right? So
they do it in CONCACAF for the Nations Cup or whatever the equivalent is there. So in that North American, Central American nations, so they do, because there's so many Caribbean nations within that. Within CONCACAF that and I think they've only done it once, and it filtered, as you'd expect and as you'd hope, I suppose, but it filtered the top sides to the top, and United States beat Mexico. But from what I gather, I'm not a keen follower of CONCACAF or anything, but it creates a lot of competition at your own level. You're not because in the current system where if we're in the the 4th pot or whatever it is, we're always fighting above our weight division kind of, whereas this provides even contests along the way that you have a realistic chance of winning without it being a miracle. So I mean, it's good in that way, and that so you'll get competitive games and sort of maybe Europa League level games, but with Champions League prestige and all of that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I think it does end up sort of stratifying the competition pretty firmly, that you'll get the big clubs right up top. I mean, that happens now anyway, so it's not too different. But I think there is a level of conditioning us to this idea that there is a competition going on at the top level of the European nations. There's a competition going on in the middle and a competition, and whether it's the Super League by another mechanism, I think is probably the fear that we all have, right? Or maybe not a fear, but the debacle that was trying to bring in the European Super League has a level of, there's a logic and I'm not saying like an inevitability, but there's a logic to having those clubs always at the top and kind of locking that in. This feels like it could be a step along the way to this idea of a league, like a league that's familiar to us as national competitions. The way that we're kind of describing it's like 36 teams. It sort of resembles a national competition with a different format. I just wonder if it's going to end up sort of stratifying the clubs in that way. But it is exciting. I think we've got to embrace that change. I'm not sort of trying to be against it or anti it or anything like that. But I think we are being conditioned to having the Champions League or the European League as, the main game. And, how quickly that happens, we're not too sure. But, there'll be a lot of money and a lot of interests who would be looking to push those supersonic sides into their own competition, playing against each other as much as possible.
Yeah, this is UEFA's attempt, I think, to head off the Super League by, providing a number of the things that the Super League ultimately promises. clubs.
Yes, that's right. So it's taking. Yeah, that's right. It's where the systems and structures and regulations or whatever that we've got in place have been able to prevent. Yeah, to head off the the Super League or the Indian Premier League kind of version of how that might go. But yeah, but I think we are being conditioned to a sort of a broader
I'm
sense.
For that. Happy days. Bring it on.
Mm. Yeah, I think for Celtic in particular, that's a pretty attractive prospect. Like, if we're part of that.
I think, like anything that UEFA does, though, I think we have to look at it with a certain amount of trepidation. There's certainly no magnanimous intentions behind this other than holding wealth. So I think the money, as Andrew Galea still saying in the comments, the money will still flow to the top. And you're right what you're saying. This is to head off the European Super League and to give the bigger clubs what they want, which is more games in European competition rather than domestic competition. One of the upshots of it is there's likely to be 5 English teams in the competition, which is, not great. I don't believe there should be 5 teams from any country playing in what's supposed to be a Champions League. But that's just the way it is, and English clubs are the big draw card, and that's what UEFA are pandering for. And it's up to us to try and, 2 extra games will certainly be a big financial boost for us, as long as we get in there, and let's hope we do. But it'll benefit bigger teams more than it'll benefit us. But that's just the way football's going, and we just have to either get on board or just, wither away. So we just need to keep moving forward and try and keep up. So yeah.
You look at the 4 places. There's 4 extra places, right? 2 places go to countries performing best in Europe. So last season that would have been England and Holland. You get an extra place each. France. Currently you have the top 4 teams. The top 4 leagues in Europe get 4 teams each. Another place will go to the 5th best team, which is another place for France, and only 1 place goes to the Champions path of the qualifying stages. Kind of makes a mockery of the name Champions League. Like,
it's not the Champions League.
Nah, it's not. It's just a European league. No, they shouldn't. But if they wanted to restructure, I would say, I expand it by 4 teams. Give France an extra place. Fair enough. Pander to the elites there, and then just give the other 3 places to the Champions path. Just get more teams who are actually champions in there and give them a fairer crack of the whip, money wise as well. But they're not prepared to do that. Like, it's the rich looking after the rich.
Well, I think it's exciting. All you have to do is finish the top 24, and you've got your own kind of playoff. I mean, you're already into the knockout stages for yourself.
So I have a question. I've got a question, Gav. You might be able to answer for me. So you get 8 games in the league, and it's the playoff games over and above that.
Yep.
So you get another 2.
If you finish in the top 24.
So you finish in 24.
A minimum of 8 games, yes, and then if you finish within 9th and 24th, you have an extra playoff game. Is it one off game?
No, it's two-legged, I think. Yeah,
it's 2-legged.
It's home and away. Yeah, it'll be home and away.
So that's the only home and away.
So the majority of the clubs half the clubs get 10 games.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm.
So 10 games and a chance of getting into the last 16, as long as we don't finish in the bottom 12. In which case, it's abject misery.
It's bad news. Yeah.
What is it? We get about 2 million per home game in Europe, so it's an extra 10 million in the coffer, isn't it? So, and if we get, I think the money goes up as well. I'm pretty sure there's an increase in the money getting paid out to clubs, but I would need to check that. Like, that's something for another day. Maybe
that's for the away games in Saudi Arabia. You get an extra.
Yeah.
They can be sure the sort of Barcelonas and Real Madrids of the world will be getting more money than us out of it, that's for sure.
Well, let's not be David Martindale.
Yeah, let's not, Gav. Good point. All right, so we've ticked over the hour, so we'll probably have to call it a day. So thanks very much for everyone who joined us in the comments, and if you've joined us live on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. Everything helps us grow the channel. Please go and visit us on our social pages, which are all on up at the top of the screen there. And if you're listening on audio, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. So I'll just go around the tiles now and grab some final thoughts from you. First from you, Gav.
Okay, well, my final thought, you know what's coming here, Steve. It's not often I come across new music because I'm old and I live in the middle of nowhere. But I have been listening a lot recently to a band that's been around for a while, but they're new to me. And I'd like to recommend them to the listeners. They're called Sleaford Mods. And,
I've seen them. Yeah.
And they're touring in
saw them
Australia
play.
and New Zealand. Oh, wow.
I saw them a couple of years ago. They're quite incredible, yeah.
So, okay, great. And for the people listening, if they want to check it out, Jules Holland, on the Jules Holland show, they performed a song called Job Seeker. Incredible performance.
We'll check it out.
That's my recommendation of the week.
I gave them a bit of a listen, Gavin. My only recommendation would be they're not suitable for work.
That's true. Or small children.
They're not suitable for listening with children around.
But they're a good reminder if you're an expat who lives in a nice country why you don't live in Britain anymore.
That's right, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Willie, final thoughts?
If your significant other is a massive country music fan, never look up at the TV and say, who the F is Keith Urban and what's he famous for?
Willie's takes are always very personal.
So you've been in the doghouse, have you, mate?
Oh, I just turned and looked at the missus to see if she'd tell me who he was, and there was just daggers getting just stared right through me. It was like, oh no, he's a country legend of some sort, isn't he?
Oh yes, he's an Australian legend as well. You get any trouble anywhere in Australia for that?
I know. Never heard of him until the other night, and me and the kids and the wife sat down to watch The Voice from last year. And I was like, oh, right.
Nicole Kidman's husband, that's it, isn't it?
I've never heard of him until a week ago, like so.
Yeah. And Dave, final thoughts?
Yeah, a couple of things I wanted to mention. Just a mention of, you know, as you know, one of the many Western United supporters in Australia. Speaking from Ballarat, which is the heartland of Western United, and just congratulations to the women's team for making grand final in their first season. It's actually quite. People may disagree with me here, but like it's actually quite an extraordinary model of the women's side in particular, building a club from the ground up, from a sort of a grassroots with a few, you know, international signings and stuff like that. It's been quite an amazing ride. Unfortunately, I won't be able to go to the grand final because it'll be in Sydney. So that's a whole nother question. But no, speaking of old music, this weekend I'm going to see the Smashing Pumpkins play at Cryle Castle. I don't know if any of you have been to Cryle Castle. It's actually in my hometown of Ballarat. So the Smashing Pumpkins are playing in Ballarat with Jane's Addiction. And at a festival at this pretend castle that was built in 1974 or something like that. And is actually, I've only ever been there for my kids' birthday parties. And now I'm going there to see the one of the greatest bands of my lifetime, the Smashing Pumpkins. So I can't wait. I can't believe it. But it's, going to be a great weekend.
All right. So my final thoughts. So yesterday was the 17th of April. And on the 17th of April, 1915, Celtic's founder, Brother Wilfred, passed away. So that's 108 years since Brother Wilfred passed away yesterday. So you get a chance to raise a glass to the man primarily responsible for us all sitting here today talking about the club that we love. Gav's got there first, emptied his glass. All right, if you haven't had a chance to listen to the Weekend Review Celtic Down Under podcast on Monday, please go and download it and listen to it. It's absolutely brilliant. And don't forget to tune in to the Wednesday Pot Noodle show tomorrow. And with that, I'll say hail, hail, and good night.
Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
Hail.